It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting, either through my website, emailrevealer.com, or you can just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. That's where we put up almost 8 hours of exclusive content each month, plus the old member section shows and stuff like that, documents I throw up there every now and then. And, of course, our archives are always free. You go to Spreaker.com, you get all of our past shows and our repeats we play every night. And you'll find a couple of shows we did with our guest today, Mark Shaw, who's just done a lifetime of work on the Dorothy Kilgallen story. You can check out his different websites, markshawbooks.com, courageinthefaceofevil.com, the Dorothy Kilgallen Story.org, and The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, which is also about Dorothy Kilgallen. But the book he came here to talk about today, and I'm really excited about this because I love talking about Marilyn Monroe. I think that's such a fascinating story. It's brand new. It's not even out yet. The ink's not even dry yet. It's coming out in April. Okay? Collateral Damage, The Mysterious Deaths of Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy Kilgallen and the ties that bind them to Robert Kennedy and the JFK assassination. This is a lot of good stuff there. A lot of people don't realize the connection with the Kennedys and how deep that goes with the death of Marilyn Monroe. But you can put in your orders now, a pre-order, and you'll get it April 28th, I guess, right? Mark, are you there?
Correct.
Hey, Mark, remind the audience, who is Mark Shaw?
Well, boy, that takes a while, I don't know. At one particular point, my wife and I looked back at my life, and we thought I had at least 30 to 35 careers. So, you start out with being from a small town in Indiana, and then I went to Purdue University. It took me almost 6 years to get through there. I'm pleased to say that they're going to be the archival repository for all of my body of work, all my books and everything, but it took me a long time to get through. By the grace of God, got into law school, was a criminal defense lawyer with some pretty strong high-profile trials during the 70s. Then left that, moved to Colorado, started a newspaper, and then got into the television arena. I was a correspondent for Good Morning America for a few years, doing human interest stories and looking at legal cases and things like that for them. Ended up on a CBS show and some other television before I decided that maybe Hollywood land wasn't really for me. Moved back to Indiana, and the first trial I ever fully analyzed was the Mike Tyson rape trial. And that ended up being the foundation for the first book of my career, Down for the Count, because I was very concerned that Mike Tyson did not get a fair trial. And now we move ahead all the way to here, and now there's almost 30 books out there, including what you've talked about. This will be the 5th book that touches on the JFK assassination.
Whenever you tell your life story there, we always get sidetracked on Mike Tyson. I got to have you come back and tell that story about the Mike Tyson trial, because I'm just so fascinated with him as well. Well,
let me just tell you, by the way, you'll be even more fascinated. I sat down for an interview of about 4 hours a couple of weeks ago. ABC News is actually doing a 5-part docu-series on Mike Tyson's life and times and all of that. And I think now it looks like that'll come out in January, so you'll be interested in that.
And you're going to be in the film?
I talk about the trial in there, yes.
Excellent. Looking forward to that. Now, I know also, too, in your work on the Dorothy Kilgallen case, you're always putting a lot of pressure on the prosecutors in New York and the NYPD commissioner. What's the update on that?
Well, it's been a long road, and last night I was even going through some of the files and looking at this journey that I've taken. I've said before, Ed, I think for whatever reason, Dorothy decided that I was to write her story. People will talk about that, but obviously she was the most credible reporter to have ever investigated the JFK assassination. She was at the trial of Jack Ruby and interviewed him a couple times. She exposed his Warren Commission testimony before it was supposed to be published. And then she launched this 18-month investigation into the JFK assassination. And then, unfortunately, in November of 1965, she was found dead. And we can go into some of the details about her death that are in The Reporter Who Knew Too Much and Denial of Justice, staged death scene and all of that. And so when that book came out, The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, I decided, because there was no investigation of her death in 1965, if I could get Cyrus Vance Jr., the New York City District Attorney's Office, to investigate. And lo and behold, the New York Post announced that they were going to do that, and they promised a thorough investigation. There were almost 250,000 hits on the New York Post online article, and off we went. And so I spent a great deal of time informing a detective by the name of Ramos, who was assigned by the DA's office to work with me and look into Dorothy's death. I ended up finally flying to New York and met with Detective Ramos and went ahead and gave him a 70-page evidence report and all the reasons why it was a homicide, not one barbiturate in her system, but 3, wasn't an accidental death, and all of that. And more than that, pointed out to him that there was a main suspect in Dorothy's death named Ron Pataki, who was still alive and living in Columbus, Ohio. Well, I floated back to San Francisco from New York because I was so excited, and so was the detective. He was telling me all about his father watching What's My Line shows with Dorothy on them, and he had already sent out subpoenas and all of that, and so I just really felt like that we were on the right track. And so we went along for a few months, and then we got to August of 2017, and the detective told me that he and the main prosecutor assigned to the case wanted to talk to me. And I don't know why I was a little dubious, but we got on the telephone, and this guy named Eugene Hurley, an assistant DA, started telling me that they were stopping the investigation. They hadn't been able to show there was harm to Dorothy, and so on and so forth there. And I just was so shocked. I started arguing with him, and he said, well, Mr. Shaw, we're not going to argue with you. Besides, we don't know who did it. That's an exact quote. We don't know who did it, which obviously, Ed, meant that they knew it was a homicide. So I appealed. I went forward and filed a Freedom of Information request for documents and witnesses and statements and things like that. I got nothing from them. I appealed it. I went to the New York State Attorney General. I went to the governor. I went to everybody, but I couldn't get it turned around. Well, I finally decided that because of some new evidence that we can talk about that incriminated Pataki more than anything, I decided to launch another adventure into getting an investigation with New York Police Commissioner Dermot Shea. And in February of this year, I went back to New York. He was speaking at a police athletic activities PAL luncheon. I went there, I bought a ticket, and I listened to him because he was the featured speaker. And during the Q&A afterwards, I asked him about cold case cases, and it reminded him that I'd sent him a letter asking him to assign Dorothy's case to their cold case squad and all of that. And I said, what are you doing about these cold case squad cases? He said, they're very important. I know about your Dorothy Kilgallen request, and why don't you come up and talk to me afterwards? And so I did, and I went up there. I was very patient, and I went up to him. I said, listen, thanks. Is there somebody in your office that I can work with on this investigation? And he introduced me to Detective Jonathan Rivera, a tall guy, good-looking guy, formidable. And so I started talking to him, and the commissioner asked him, Rivera, to give me his business card, which I have here now. And so I floated back to San Francisco because I thought I'm going to get my investigation. Well, I went ahead and sent one email to Rivera, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. No response whatsoever. I finally left a telephone message with him asking him to get in touch with me, and he did not. And I think I soon realized that Commissioner Shea, for whatever reason, was playing me the fool. He had no intention whatsoever of having Rivera, who he had put in the middle of all this, which bothers me probably more than anything, putting the detective in a no-win situation by probably telling him, or not probably, telling him not to communicate with me when Shea had promised me that would happen. So I was really upset with that. I wrote Shea a couple more letters just asking him whether he was a man of his word or a liar. I didn't hear from him again, and so I filed on October 7th, Ed, a complaint with what they call the Inspector General for the NYPD, and they investigate allegations of wrongdoing with the police department, but also with civilians in the police department, and that's what Shea is now. He's no longer a police officer. He's a civilian. I filed that on October 7th. I've been told that they will get back to me next month with regard to my allegations of misconduct by the commissioner in the way that he treated me by promising me one thing and doing another, and also abuse of authority because, as I say, he somehow or another put Detective Rivera in a terrible situation, and under his command, Detective Rivera, he did that, and so I allege that in my complaint, and hopefully I'll get a fair shake from that in Inspector General's office, and if I don't, then I'm going to take both of these situations with Vance Jr. and Commissioner Shea to Letitia Jones, who is now the New York Attorney General and known for really looking into these kinds of situations. But I'm going to keep the faith that maybe I'll get a fair shake from the Inspector General's office, and that will lead to an investigation of Dorothy's death.
Mark, let me ask you this, because I get updates from you. It's on your mailing list. How can people get on your list there to get these updates? Because I'm sure a lot of people are sitting on the edge of their seat. They want to see what happens in December.
Well, that's very important because with each one of my books, I've probably gotten at least 2,500 to 3,000 emails from people around the world who have read my books, watched my presentations like ones with you on YouTube. There's almost 2 million views of those, and I get tips from people. I'm getting them continuing now. Some tip the other day that I'm going to look into from people. So the best way is to go to markshawbooks.com, and there's a place to sign up for the newsletter, and we sent one out yesterday, and I think you got a copy, of course, and so that's the best way, and then I promise people they send me an email, I get back to them. I've never not done that, and I think it's important. If they're going to take the time to email me, then I'm going to get back to them. And as I say, I would encourage people. Maybe they knew Dorothy Kilgallen. Maybe they knew something about her death. And with the new book, maybe they knew something about Marilyn Monroe. So I encourage people to get in touch with me.
Yeah, and I encourage people, too, to go back to our previous interviews on Spreaker.com, because we've spent 2 hours on this, and it's not like this is a guy who's an author, who researches different topics. Mark Shaw is really devoted a significant portion of his life to investigating the case of Dorothy Kilgallen, and then wrote books about it. He's really up to his neck in this, and his heart is really in it. There's always an expression you use when you talk about this, about the dead crying out. What is it?
Well, I found this quote recently, and I'd never seen it before. It's by a acclaimed novelist named Bugeaud, and it basically is: the dead cannot cry out for justice. It is the duty of the living to do that for them. And I have it. I'm looking at it because it's taped on my wall, right by my computer, and I look at it every day. Many people, Ed, you're a historian. You're a man of the truth. You know how important history is. People say, well, Mark, come on. This happened in 1965, and we have the assassination in 63. Marilyn died in 62. Who gives a darn? And I say to them, well, it's all about history. And there's so many distortions of history out there. For heaven's sakes, in the new book, I point out again that the 6th Floor Museum in Dallas has become an Oswald shrine. There's nothing in that museum anymore except the fact that Oswald killed JFK all by himself. All the books are tilted that way. it's really disappointing because that's a distortion of history, and I've really objected to that because young people come through that and are brainwashed with that kind of information. And if it's the last thing I do before I pass on to the herever, I'm gonna put that darn museum out of business.
I think another issue with all this is people dismiss Kilgallen as, well, she was What's My Line? She was a game show. It was people really got to go back, buy these books, and really, really hear it's very thoroughly investigated and researched, the murder of Dorothy Kilgallen. But now let's move on to Collateral Damage, the mysterious deaths of Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy Kilgallen. Give us an idea. What's the book about?
Well, it's interesting, you know, Ed, kind of a progression here. My first book I wrote about anything having to do with the assassination was a biography of Melvin Belli, who represented Jack Ruby. And when I found out about his mafia ties, then I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go back to the '60 election and look into Joe Kennedy and fixing the election and the whole, promise to the mobsters they'd leave them alone if they got in the White House, and then they double-crossed them, and Bobby Kennedy became Attorney General. And then JFK was killed by those, I believe, those enemies of Bobby's who wanted to make Bobby powerless. And so I looked into all of that with the Poison Patriarch, and then I landed on a story about Dorothy Kilgallen. I didn't know anything about her, Ed, except that she was a star panelist on What's My Line, a quiz show that was on CBS for 15 years in the 50s and 60s. And so, I basically had no knowledge of anything about her with the JFK assassination. But when I was interviewing a friend of Melvin Belli's for that first book, King of the Courtroom, this guy said to me, well, Belli knew Dorothy Kilgallen. And I said, oh, come on. From What's My Line, the quiz show where they guessed people's unusual occupations? He said, Mark, you don't know anything about her. She was syndicated to 200 newspapers across the country with her column in the New York Journal American. She had a radio show listened to, by 1 million people a day. She covered the Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, the Dr. Sam Shepard case, which became the Fugitive, and the Jack Ruby trial, Mark. And I said, oh, my goodness. And that's when I started to look into Dorothy Kilgallen. And so I wrote The Reporter Who Knew Too Much, which became a bestseller, and then Denial of Justice, and I was done again. But people, these readers and those who have watched the presentations and hear me on shows like yours, Ed, kept saying to me, Mark, a question. Was Dorothy Kilgallen's death connected to Marilyn Monroe's, or was Marilyn Monroe's connected to Dorothy Kilgallen? And I never thought that really was, except when I discovered, as what may surprise some of your listeners, is that those three people, Marilyn Monroe, JFK, and Dorothy Kilgallen, died within 40 months of each other. Marilyn was August of '62, JFK was November of '63, and Dorothy died in November of '65. They all died at a real young age, and so I started looking into this, and it was amazing because once I did, I just could tell that there was a connection of some sort. And I'll tell you the first thing that really came to mind, and I explore this a great deal in the new book, Collateral Damage, which will be out in April, and that is the death scenes with each of JFK, with Marilyn, and especially with Dorothy and Marilyn, because they both died alone in a bedroom. They both were allegedly died of overdoses of barbiturates, although while Dorothy's was called accidental, Marilyn's was called probable homicide, probable suicide, which I will completely destroy that view in the new book. And also, I went to look at the autopsies. Of course, JFK, we know about the crime scene there was, and everything that happened after that was compromised. So I then looked at the autopsies, and if you look at them, there's similarities for sure. And the first one, of course, to look at is Marilyn's. Well, that was done by, at the time, a very famous medical examiner named Thomas, in Thomas Noguchi's office. He wasn't as famous at that time, but he was a junior medical examiner assigned to the case, and he's the one that admitted later that he botched the the autopsy, and there were several reasons why he did that. In Dorothy Kilgallen's case, they said she accidentally died, but the autopsy, again by a junior medical examiner, never took into account that there were 3 barbiturates in her system, not 1. And then I use as an expert, and if you ever have a chance, if you haven't already, Dr. Cyril Weck, who is the most renowned forensic scientist, I think most people would say, in the history of the world. I have such respect for him. I've quoted him in each one of my books. And basically, he looked at Marilyn Monroe's autopsy and said that the judgment that there was a probable suicide, he had never seen that designation in more than 15,000 autopsies that he had been involved in. So I started to connect the problems with the autopsies, and that then led me into looking at the cause of death and how these 3 people died.
Real quick about the autopsy. There's a lot of speculation that some of these barbiturates were administered through suppositories. Did that come up in Weck's autopsy?
No, it didn't come up in Noguchi's autopsy at all.
Right.
Basically, it was that she swallowed all these pills, so that didn't happen. With Weck, I explore in there his theory, his analysis of what happened, and there is some positive information that I will expose in the book with regard to what I believe is the most plausible way that Marilyn died. The reason I'm not mentioning and going into it in detail right now is because I'm still researching that, and I'll have that all in new manuscript for the new book in April.
Now, why would Robert Kennedy and John F. Kennedy have a motive to be involved in the death of Marilyn Monroe?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it, that Dorothy was killed because she was too close to the truth in the JFK assassination, so that's her connection to the Kennedys. With Marilyn, we go to, you have to look at her entire body of work. One thing, by the way, I don't want to forget to mention, besides looking into the life and times and the deaths of these 3, what I would call 20th century historical icons, I'm humanizing them. Too often we just remember, hey, Marilyn Monroe committed suicide. Dorothy Kilgallen died of a drug overdose. JFK was assassinated. There's a lot more to those people, and I have taken pains to uncover information about their private lives and all kinds of information that will give people a different portrayal of them than all the stereotypical ones that we've gotten in other books. So as far as Bobby and JFK came, into Marilyn's life, we have to go back to the '60 election, because at that particular point, as we recall, JFK defeated Richard Nixon, and then there was a double cross, because I had in The Reporter Who Knew Too Much and Denial of Justice a witness right there when Joe Kennedy ordered JFK to appoint Bobby Kennedy Attorney General, which was completely against everything they had told the underworld figures who had helped them win the '60 election by fixing the vote in Illinois and West Virginia. And so we go back to that time, and now Bobby Kennedy is Attorney General, and he's what we would arguably call the second most powerful man in the United States of America, next to his brother, JFK. So what does Bobby do? Well, he goes after those mafioso, and one of them's Carlos Marcello, and he deports them and all of that. And as we get to the end of 1963, Marcello's back is against the wall. I look at motive there, and I think I've been able to prove in the books that Marcello orchestrated the JFK assassination. He wanted to kill Bobby, who he hated, but instead he orchestrated the death of JFK so Bobby Kennedy would be powerless. And that's exactly what happened. So that's Bobby Kennedy as of, the end of 1963. But that powerful stature that he had was evident in 1962. Because during the summer of 1962, JFK became embroiled in a love affair, although short, with Marilyn Monroe. It all happened when Marilyn was invited to speak, to speak at a birthday party for JFK at Madison Square Garden. And there's the famous photo that you probably have seen of Marilyn standing between Bobby, whose back is kind of to the camera, and JFK, and this was after she had been there, and she sang, not only spoke, but she sang Happy Birthday in a sultry dress, I guess you would call it, that didn't show, that showed about everything about that wonderful figure of hers, and just absolutely mesmerized the audience. Dorothy Kilgallen, in fact, wrote about that, saying that Marilyn basically was making love to the audience, and she was, in her wonderful way. And so, her career, Marilyn's career was at the top. She was making movies. She had some problems with 20th Century Fox, but she was on the mend there, and Dorothy wrote a bunch of columns about her and how well she was doing and everything. And then we get to the point where this meeting between the three of those, JFK, Bobby, and Marilyn, is at Madison Square Garden, and that's when the first romantic interludes with JFK and Marilyn take place. Well, that goes on for a little while, but then Joe Kennedy basically orders JFK to drop Marilyn because he's worried about the fact that, like all the other women that JFK was sleeping with, philandering, and all of that, that this is going to hurt any re-election and all of that other kind of thing, and so those two are done. So we go from that particular point, and we can take a little time if you want to ask any questions about that particular situation, but then we'll get into the whole relationship between Bobby Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe.
And now a word from our sponsors.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
Thank you so much for listening to the Opperman Report. I want to welcome all our new listeners at WWPR 1490 AM in the Tampa Bay area. We're brand new down here. We're getting a nice warm welcome. We have great advertising opportunities for local sponsors, local businesses, but also international websites and international companies too on our other stations in California, Nevada, Utah, and on the internet worldwide. But down here in Tampa Bay, Florida, we have some great opportunities for you to come in and get very, very affordable advertising rates. Get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com and we'll cut you a good deal. PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild. The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Get into Bobby and Marilyn.
All right. Well, you know, you've got Bobby Kennedy there, and Marilyn is calling, this is something I've been able to prove, is calling the White House, wanting to talk to Jack Kennedy and all of that. He's not taking her calls and all that. And so she and I even have a quote that Bobby Kennedy was kind of the person that women, you know, cried on his shoulder when JFK, you know, JFK had a lot of great qualities to him, and I point those out in the book and everything, but my goodness, he was a womanizer and a sexual addict in many ways, with so many different women that would take 2 hours to give you a list of them. But you know, he had dumped Marilyn, and so what does Marilyn do? Well, she cries on Bobby Kennedy's shoulder. Now, you know, it's been interesting. I have not looked at any books about Marilyn Monroe. Any of those written after about 1970. I did not want to go back. I use primary sources. I don't want this person told this person, that kind of evidence. I don't like that. You're like that too, Ed. You don't like that. And so I don't use it in my books. And so I was able to find 2 or 3 books that had been written shortly after Marilyn died in August of 1962. And some articles as well, and that kind of thing. And I use those as my primary research for this new book, Collateral Damage, comparing the deaths of Marilyn, JFK, and Dorothy. And what I was able to find is that the crying on the shoulder led to more than that with Bobby Kennedy. And while the Kennedys denied it, that anything had happened there and continue to this day and all of that, I was able to prove through primary source documents and witness statements at the time and accounts that were in books by 2 authors especially that I heap praise on because they interviewed people who were there at the time. They interviewed her psychiatrist and her doctor. They interviewed her best friends, Marilyn's. You know, this one gentleman even found documents of at the pharmacy where Marilyn was getting her drugs. You know, all of these different kinds of information showing that Bobby Kennedy had been in Beverly Hills at the time. You have to remember he had written a book called The Enemy Within, I believe what it was called, and it was all about the gangsters and how terrible they were and everything. And he was trying to get a movie made, so he was in Los Angeles a great deal. And I've been able to prove that he was seeing Marilyn Monroe on a regular basis at Peter Lawford's Malibu home and so on and so forth. So they had struck up a love affair, and it was a sexual affair. And so now we get to July, August of 1962, and what we find out is that that relationship is soured because now Bobby Kennedy doesn't want anything to do with Marilyn anymore. And it's interesting because I like to rely on government documents when I feel like that they are valid, and I was able to find an FBI memo that is shocking in nature. And it basically ties the 3 individuals in the book together. One of the interesting parts of that is not only Dorothy, but Marilyn, but JFK's interest in UFOs. And there's some very interesting information that will be in the new book as to how that happened and how the 3 of them get tangled up in all of this conjecture about whether they're little green men or not. Dorothy wrote a long article about it and so on and so forth. So I found that FBI memo, but more than that then, it really discusses how valid the allegations were that Bobby Kennedy was having this relationship with Marilyn. And so I took that and I started to really look at the 3 deaths through Dorothy Kilgallen's eyes. How would she have investigated Marilyn's death? and I was able to find columns that she had written both before and after Marilyn's death that gave me an insight into what was happening and why she had real doubts about Marilyn having committed suicide, and how she believed, as she called it, the man in her life was actually Bobby Kennedy. So that gave me, an interesting view. I always looked at JFK's assassination as why Bobby Kennedy wasn't killed instead of why JFK was, and that changes everything. Well, when you look at Marilyn Monroe's death, you need to look at motive. If she in fact was killed, then who would have had the greatest motive to have done that at the time? Well, unfortunately, Marilyn and Dorothy had another connection, another similarity of many. I think there are more than 50 similarities in the new book. But Marilyn Monroe was a blabbermouth, and she started telling people, and I have some very strong evidence that I uncovered, that she was going to expose both her relationship with JFK and the one with Bobby Kennedy, and any possible national secrets that they may have told her as they were both lying on the pillow in a bed somewhere. They had talked too much to her about those kind of things. So she was saying that at some particular point she might go to the media with that. Well, why is that a connection with Dorothy? Because Dorothy was telling everyone, and this is in both The Reporter Who Knew Too Much and Denial of Justice, and even more so now in Collateral Damage, that she was going to crack the JFK assassination wide open. If the wrong people knew what I know about the JFK assassination, it would cost me my life. I'm afraid for my life. I bought a gun. All of those things, but she was out there telling the world, and obviously those people who were involved in the JFK assassination had the motive to have silenced her, because Dorothy was going to put all of that in a new book she was writing for Random House. So you've got both women, Marilyn in August 62, and then Dorothy as we get to November 65, saying way too much. Dorothy was the reporter who knew too much, and in my opinion, Marilyn was the actress who knew too much. And so we get to the point there where this exposure is going to happen, Ed, and who's going to be harmed with that? Well, I've been able to show through some articles and books and actual accounts at the time, there's only one person you can point to, and that is Bobby Kennedy.
Mark, in your research on this, did you look into the incidents at the Cal Neva Lodge?
I tell you what, Ed, I'm always amazed at you and your research. You're way ahead of me. Actually, yes, I certainly did. And there's been a lot of conjecture about what happened. For those that aren't familiar, there was the Cal Neva Lodge on the border of. It's on the border. In fact, it finally just reopened. It's interesting to know. Somebody took it over, but it's on the border of Nevada. Let's see, is it Nevada? Yeah, Nevada and California, by Lake Tahoe. And this was a place that was infiltrated by a lot of, visited by a lot of gangsters. Supposedly, Joe Kennedy had a interest in it. Frank Sinatra had an interest. Sam Giancana, the gangster, had an interest in it. The Rat Pack, that's where they were all up there. All of them, Sammy Davis and Peter Lawford and all those, and of course Frank Sinatra. And so the conjecture was that Marilyn Monroe was there the weekend before she died. And we've never quite been able to uncover exactly what happened. And just recently I've been able to come up with some primary source evidence, and so I think I'll be able to prove in the book, and I'll be able to give you more information about that as we get closer to the book coming out, as to exactly what happened up there. But there's no question in my mind that, again, Marilyn was talking too much. She was disappointed. JFK had dumped her, then RFK had dumped her, and she was at her wit's end. Everything else in her life was really going along well. In fact, she believed at some particular point that she might even remarry Joe DiMaggio. And so everything was going well, but there was this black cloud hanging over her life, and that was this whole situation with Bobby Kennedy, because she felt like she was being used. I don't know why, it just came to me. That's how I feel about Commissioner Shea, that he just used me in many ways. And Mark, go away. And we're not going to, all this. It's a terrible feeling. Any human being doesn't like to feel like they're being used, and that's how Marilyn felt. She was telling people she felt like a piece of meat, that they were just, sharing her and tossing her around and all of that and that kind of thing. And so you can imagine, and I try to really get into the emotion of this, because here's the most famous movie actress in the world, arguably the most beautiful woman who ever lived, with that incredible smile and curvaceous figure and all of this. And just wants to be, as I've found some writings by Marilyn, wants just to be recognized as a credible actress and all of that. And if you look at some of those films before she died, The Misfits and The 7-Year Itch, and some of those films, you can see that wonderful way of hers and everything. And here she is. First, the president won't take her calls, and then Bobby won't take her calls. And you can just imagine her sitting by the phone crying her eyes out, because she was a very emotional woman. She was going through tough times with that. She was having trouble sleeping and all of that. And you can just imagine what that was like for her. And she didn't need to be treated that way. And it should have never happened. That should have never happened to Marilyn Monroe.
What do you believe happened the day she died, and who do you believe was there and involved?
Well, again, what I've tried to do is separate fact from fiction here, because there's so many fictional accounts that are based. Okay, I'm going to say this. This is the Rudy Giuliani way of proving things. You go out and you make all these statements about fraud with the election and everything else, and then you have actually no proof. And I think yesterday he admitted he'd exaggerated a lot of that. Well, this is the same thing that happened in 1962 with Marilyn's death. The crime scene was completely compromised. When her doctor and psychiatrist got there, there was about a few hours before the police were called. It was like Dorothy Kilgallen's crime scene. The same thing happened there, the compromised. And so there's no way to tell exactly what happened in that bedroom in terms of exactly what Marilyn did, because there were no eyewitnesses to it. And then they compromised the death scene. But what I've been able to do is peel away the onion in a lot of ways with going after, again, those people, authors, respected authors, other people who were there at the time, and some new people who have come to me, the daughter of the real estate agent that sold Marilyn's home, and others. And I've been able to piece together, and again, I'm not going to be able to get into too much detail because I'm still working on this, but I'm going to be able to give, I think, the most plausible explanation for how Marilyn died, who was responsible, how the cover-up happened, and all of that. And as I say, hopefully I'm looking for one more piece of evidence that I think I'll be able to find, and then I'll be able to really come forward with, I think, a breakthrough in terms of exactly what happened to Marilyn and why in August 1962.
But right now, if we go to Amazon and we look up collateral damage, in the description, you say that you believe that Robert Kennedy, that there's enough evidence to convict Robert Kennedy.
Oh, no, I don't have any problem with mentioning that. Here's the other thing that I've said in the on Amazon, in that or Barnes and Noble has it too, and others will have it in the summary, is that my belief is that if Robert Kennedy would have been exposed both with the love affair, but more than that, with complicity in in Marilyn's death, and I think I've proven that in the book in a number of ways, then if that would have happened, then his power would have been neutralized, because he would have had to have explained the affair with Marilyn. But more than that, because of the heavy evidence that there was that he was involved in Marilyn's death, due again to motive, to shut her up, to not let her tell the world, the media, about the love affairs and any secrets that were given. If he had been brought to justice, as he should have been, as I believe he should have been, based on all that evidence, he would have been neutralized. And that would have in turn, caused those of his enemies, including Marcello and the others, to have no reason to have orchestrated the JFK assassination, because Bobby's power would have been powerless. His power would have been much less. He probably would have to have resigned as Attorney General and everything. And so what do we have there? If he had been brought to justice, what my theory is, and people may disagree with it, but my theory is, based on all my research, if he had been brought to justice, there would never have been the JFK assassination by Bobby's enemies in 1963. And then what do we know? There would have never been Dorothy Kilgallen's investigation of the JFK assassination, because there would have been no assassination. And that's where you get the trigger effect, the collateral damage to these three individuals based on Bobby Kennedy and Joe Kennedy's double cross in 1960 and 1961, when Bobby went after those mobsters. And I could even tell you a quick story. I saw firsthand when I was with Good Morning America. They asked me to go to Philadelphia and interview the lawyer for a mafia don there named Angelo Bruno, and I did. And that interview was on Good Morning America the next morning, and the producer said, "Mark, do you think that lawyer will talk to you again?" And so I called his office, and this weeping woman answered, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, Mr. Shaw, I guess you don't know. When such and such, I can't remember his name, when he started his car this morning, it blew up." You can't mess around with those guys. And that's what basically happened with Dorothy Kilgallen's death. And then with regard to Marilyn's death, you're in a situation where it all goes back to 1960, when Bobby and Joe fixed that election and then got the mobsters after them. And then Bobby, of course, was Attorney General and did all of that. And that's why he was of the stature that Marilyn Monroe would have an affair with him. And when she threatened to expose that affair and whatever, Bobby Kennedy, in my opinion, there's no question, was complicit in her death.
In your research, do you believe that Marilyn Monroe was raped and drugged up at the Kilgallen Lodge, and was that a factor in any of this?
From what I've been able to discover so far, and as I say, I've got another month here to really conclude my investigation before I send in the manuscript. No, I don't believe that happened. I think it could have been planned. It could have been possible, but I've been able to find, as I say, a couple good eyewitness accounts of what happened there. I think the threat was there, and there was going to be perhaps some shenanigans with some photos being taken and some other things that would have caused Marilyn embarrassment. And my feeling, and I'm still looking into this, is that she found out about those kind of things, and it just put her again in such a desolate type of a mood, because she just, Marilyn wanted to be loved her whole life. If people don't know it, she basically had no mother in her life or a father, and was scattered around with foster homes and orphanages and everything. And here was this beautiful young woman, and she wanted to be loved, and I will show that in the book through some of the new book, Collateral Damage, through her writings and what she told people. And then she enters what you can just imagine is the world of Hollywood land, where women are just used one after the other, just like with Harvey Weinstein. I mean, it was that kind of atmosphere she was in, and so she had to overcome all of that. And then finally, when she was an established star, all at once, two of the most powerful men in the world are showing her affection and having romantic interludes with her and all of that, and then they dump her. And so you can just imagine her psyche at that particular time. And as I say, Marilyn Monroe did not deserve to be treated that way.
It's funny you mentioned her writings. Do you believe that there existed a diary?
I don't know about an actual diary. I was able to find her telephone book, and that will be in the new book. And it just has the numbers of many people, both Robert Kennedy and JFK. There's others that are in there, if I recall. I'm not sure. Maybe JFK and RFK aren't in there, but I think so. But anyway, there's all of the people she was dealing with in the entertainment industry are in there. The diary itself was present. There's no question that she had kept a diary. Now, it has never surfaced. but there were notes that she made and things found in her drawer and some other things that I've been able to call attention to and then go and do more research about that I think will lead people to understand. There's one letter that's so important that I found, and so whether that diary existed, I think there's no question it did. Whether it got into the wrong hands, into those people that were involved with Bobby Kennedy or whatever, there's no way to tell, this many decades after Marilyn's death.
What about, you hear all these stories about wiretaps, that she was dating mobsters and they were being wiretapped, and even, too, there was a conversation that the CIA tapped, that came out in a CIA document. CIA was tapping Marilyn Monroe. What did you discover in all of that?
Well, Marilyn never dated gangsters that I know of. She got involved with Frank Sinatra, which was just a terrible mistake, as bad as he was. There's been conjecture. James Hoffa supposedly wiretapped her home. CIA people wiretapped her home. And all of these conversations and everything else like that were recorded. Those, if they exist, the recordings have disappeared. How I wish I'd have been alive and been able to, old enough to be able to look into to Marilyn's death and Dorothy's death and everybody. I wasn't old enough and wasn't involved in doing any of this then. But those recordings, they've never surfaced. There is a CIA document that talks about those things. But I think more important will be this FBI memorandum that I'm still working on, because it's pretty much concrete proof about the relationship between Bobby Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, and Marilyn, and some exposures in there that I think will point directly to Bobby Kennedy as you have to think about Carlos Marcello in 1963. His back's against the wall because Bobby Kennedy is trying to deport him, and he's got him in court in a racketeering charge and everything. He's got to take action. Well, if you think about Bobby Kennedy, what did he want to become? He wanted to become president of the United States. In fact, Joe Kennedy at one point believed there could be a dynasty. Joe Kennedy Jr., then JFK, then Bobby Kennedy, then Ted Kennedy. So, Joe Kennedy Jr. died in the war, but then JFK is president. Well, what's he thinking? JFK will, preside as president for 8 years, and then Bobby will take over. So that's Bobby's aspirations. He's now become powerful as Attorney General. He's showing the Kennedy family that he's this, he's succeeded, and he's going after these mobsters, getting all the headlines and everything else, and he's going to run for president. Well, what's the problem right now? Well, if this blonde bombshell of Marilyn Monroe, this famous actress, goes to the media and starts talking about their affair, and maybe even mentions a couple things that Bobby leaked to her on the pillowcase about national security, he's dead in the water as far as his political career goes. And so you look at motive. That's what I do as a former criminal defense lawyer. I always look at motive. And there's not one more single person in the world who had more motive to kill, to somehow orchestrate the death of Marilyn Monroe than Bobby Kennedy in 1962.
We only got about a minute left, but you've got to go to Amazon and pre-order Collateral Damage, The Mysterious Deaths of Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy Kilgallen, and the ties that bind them to Robert Kennedy and the JFK assassination. But also, too, it's really a good idea to go to markshawbooks.com and get on the mailing list, because he sends out all kind of good stuff to keep you up to date. Yeah, Mark, what do you want to leave us with in 1 minute?
Well, this is my contribution to history. All of my books and all of my research are going to be at the Purdue University archives, special collections as of after the first of the year, and so people can do research based on my research. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the truth like you are, Ed, and I've always respected you greatly for that. And that's what we want to find out about history. We want to find out the truth of what happened and come as close as we can to exposing that truth to the public.
Mark Shaw, thank you so much. And everybody keep an eye out for Collateral Damage, The Mysterious Deaths of Marilyn Monroe and Dorothy Kilgallen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
And now a word from our sponsors. If you find yourself in need of legal representation, it can be a very stressful time in your life. In my career, I have dealt with thousands of lawyers, I've dealt with thousands of law firms, and I can confidently recommend to you Keith M. Davidson at kmdlaw.com. Available 24 hours, 7 days a week. Just log into kmdlaw.com. That's kmdlaw.com. Or you can call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. That's 833-4KMD-LAW. Personal injury, wrongful death, STDs, sexual assault, car accidents. They handle it all efficiently and professionally. It doesn't matter how imposing the opposition may be, because the team at kmdlaw.com are battle-tested and fierce. They will not stop until justice prevails. Go to kmdlaw.com or call toll-free 833-4KMD-LAW. If you're in for the fight of your life, stop screwing around and contact KMD Law.
Have you ever thought about opening your own mobile cart or kiosk business? Maybe the facility you manage could establish new revenue by adding coffee, food, or retail services. Cart King International can be the answer to your needs. Cart King is a North American designer and manufacturer of the finest mobile coffee, food, and retail carts and kiosks. Cart King has been working with clients and corporations across North America for 20 years, providing innovative designs, custom manufacturing, and timely delivery. Carts and kiosks are fun, and so are the dozens of designs on our website. Please visit us today at www.cart-king.com or just call us at 1-877-986-7771 and get your sales rolling.
PureSoapFlakes.com, 218-568-2525. Have you ever heard of Castile Soap? Pure Soap Flake Company handcrafts fine soap bars, laundry powder, and concentrated soap flakes using organic vegetable oils from their northern Minnesota facility. Bathe your body and wash your clothes with Pure Soap products that are free of fragrance, GMOs, palm oil, sodium lauryl sulfate, and synthetic additives. Keep it clean, folks. Pure Soap Flake Company products are kind to living creatures and sensitive skin, safe for drains and waterways, and work great in high-efficiency washers and top and front-loading machines. They have a little promotion going on. Contact them to order some soap. Mention the Opperman Report. You're going to get a free gift. They're going to send a little extra soap, travel size, soap bars and laundry soap, cleaning soap flakes. I've been using that stuff all day long today. Great stuff. Order today at puresoapflakes.com or give them a call, 218-568-2525, 218-568-2525. Pure Soap Flake Company is a proud member of the Handcrafted Soap and Cosmetic Guild.
Are you ready to change your life, but don't know how to start? Is your stress and worries keeping you awake at night? Have you been battling grief, anxiety, or depression all alone? Have you lost touch with your own sense of being or spirituality? Soul Free Therapies offers professional and affordable live video streaming counseling and coaching services from the comfort of your own home. Sessions offered in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Go to our website at www.soul-free.com and book your first session today.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by Aquadam.net. You can give them a call at 707-764-2119. A flooded home is never easy to deal with. You're left with the mess to clean up, the insurance companies to deal with, and not to mention all the memories, the precious memories that are lost in the flood. You can never replace those. And Aquadam can be a tool in your arsenal to protect your home and property from the floodwaters. The cofferdam is filled with water to control water and is reusable as long as it's taken care of. It can protect your home or business from rising floodwaters like a dam, but without the beavers. It can also be used in construction. If you need an area to be dewatered, an Aquadam can do the job. An Aquadam was used at SeaWorld in Orlando for the Mako roller coaster ride during the coaster's construction by dewatering the work area. An Aquadam is now dewatering the work area at San Antonio SeaWorld for their newest roller coaster ride. An Aquadam has been used in many construction projects all around the U.S. and all around the world. Now give Aquadam a call, 707-764-2119. You can look them up online at aquadam.net. You can find them on Facebook at Aquadam Inc. You call them up, you email them, you tell them Ed Opperman sent you, and they're going to take 10% off the price. Aquadam.net, 707-764-2119. OppermanReport.com. Do you like the work that you see us doing here at Opperman Report? You can support that work by becoming a member at OppermanReport.com. And as you have access to over 200 exclusive shows, exclusive to our member sections. Also, too, there's images, videos, documents, court docs. And don't forget, you can hear your ad played here, reach hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, because the show is repeated every day all over the world. Contact me at OppermanReport@gmail.com, and I'll give you a good deal on advertising rates.